But I want to talk about alcohol because we have a pretty immature way of thinking about alcohol and health as a culture. And the way we think about it is, I'm either an alcoholic or I'm not. And people, have all kind of reasons why you're not an alcoholic. Well, I never drink before 5, or I only have 1 or 2 drinks a day. We all, so a lot of times we think in that way. And I want to encourage you to think about it in a different way. Alcohol is, we all love it. It's great, or many of us love it. Part of life that's social and celebratory and fun and all that is really good. Alcohol is metabolically greedy. So it actually takes a lot of our energy just to process it and metabolize. It can also really affect sleep. And so when you're thinking about your stress level, if you have a whole lot of stress coming, I want you to think about alcohol needs to go down. And it's just as simple as that, because it is very likely to work against you. In medicine, when we talk about a drink, for the recommendations or guidelines is that women don't go beyond 7 drinks in a week, and men don't go beyond 14 drinks in a week. And those numbers actually are probably high. There's some recent research and studies that even say that's probably high. So, and this is what we mean by a drink. That's 1 12-ounce beer, 5 ounces of wine, or, a ounce and a half of hard liquor. So if this is your drink, you might want to think about that a little bit. This was, I don't know if anybody saw this on Good Morning America. It was hysterical, but that's Ina Garten, who I love, but her drink's a little heavy for this conversation. She might not sleep well with that. But, alcohol, this is low-lying fruit for increasing your resiliency, because you will sleep better. And so as the stress goes up, alcohol needs to go down. If you're having trouble with that, you're having cravings or some tolerance issue, and it's worth a conversation with your doctor about that if this is hard to regulate. And that can happen pretty easily, even with 1 or 2 drinks on average. So again, we've thought about this in terms of, do I have a problem or do I not have a problem? I'm a lot more interested in just thinking about this in terms of, all right, look at alcohol. What are the good things? What's it doing good for you? What do you like? There are lots of good things about that. But I want you to think, what are the not so good things? How is this affecting you that may not be as good? If it's affecting your sleep, and a lot of people will find, even if you're not aware of it, you sleep better and feel better without it. Take a look at that in the setting of stress. So, I'm not going to spend much time talking about nutrition other than to say it is one of the things we can do to generate health and resiliency, and it's really important. So fresh fruits, vegetables, and lean proteins are really the way to go. I think most lawyers that I know and are really good at this, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but there's a whole cool area of understanding about gut health and brain health that really go together. So it's also something you can control, you can do something about, and really has great benefits on health. I want to talk a little bit on this, some of the research on positive psychology and cognitive restructuring. And if you can go back to, again, that simple, are you in the stress response or are you in the anti-stress response? Our thoughts, and when I did this work last summer, I was amazed at myself. I was like, my thoughts are negative just all the time. When I started to pay attention to them, we call those NATs, negative automatic thoughts. For example, I woke up this morning going, how did I get into this today with this talk? How is it I'm giving? Okay, that was a negative automatic thought. When I stopped and paused for a minute, I reframed it to say, you know what, this is really important. I believe in this work. I believe in mental health. I believe in what I do. I think it's important. So I went from the negative stress response to the positive, which is the anti-stress response. So pay attention to that. And you may find that you can lower your stress just by being aware of your thoughts. And the bottom line is, does this thought add to my suffering? Is this creating more stress, or is it serving me well? Now, some stressful, thoughts we have, if you have forgotten a deadline, you need to go fix the deadline. That thought is serving you well. But a lot of our thoughts don't serve us well. So this is a way of thinking about that. And we could do a whole course on positive psychology and cognitive restructuring. And this is just, again, a little bit of taking stress perspective into adaptive perspective. Mistakes are a sign of failure. Mistakes are opportunity to learn. If you have a criticism, you can respond negatively, or you can just say, yeah, I can adapt and learn. Feeling like falling short, really compare yourself to other people out there. It actually looks pretty good. And we like to say, you get the brain you build. So with habits and really being aware of this, you'll be amazed at how much you can control some of the stress just by doing this approach for cognitive restructuring. I'm not going to talk a lot about exercise because I think most lawyers I know really do that well, take that seriously. But it is so important for health, and the research on it, the brain health research is tremendous. So just to summarize again, these are our resilience boosters, and relationships and closeness. And Jessica's going to really take that theme and go for the rest of our time. Exercise, nutrition, quality sleep, avoidance of toxins, really being intentional about relationship with alcohol. And we didn't talk about marijuana or other drugs, but all of that goes into that. Sharing of experiences, a mentorship is really important. Information, this relaxation response and meditation, that's a tool you have to invoke the counter stress response. It's very powerful. Volunteering, pro-social, invoking those secure attachments, even through meditation, and that's building on the work at Emory. And then positive psychology that we talked about, optimism, meaning. And I think, as Bob was saying before, it's just important to remember, why do we do what we do? It really means something and has value. So that is, that's it. And this, I thought I would end with this. If anybody wants to take a screenshot, we do have through the Georgia Bar, a really wonderful lawyer assistance program. It is confidential. And they offer 6 counseling sessions for free for lawyers. So that's a great place to start. Nationally, there's a peer-to-peer program called the Lawyers Depression Project that has a great reputation. And then at the top of this, that's just the suicide prevention line. That's probably something good for all of us to have in our phones if we needed help. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. These are tremendous resources. And with that, I will let Jessica take over from here.
Thanks, Lisa. Let's see your stop share.
Okay, let's see.
It's at the bottom of the, there you go. It's the bottom of the screen.
Okay, I'm sorry, you all. I may just am not seeing that.
If you go down to where mute and stop video is on the far left there, and just then go over to the right on that bar. could hit stop share.
There it goes. There it goes.
Sorry, y'all.
Oh, it's great thing.
No worries.
Invoking the relaxation response.
So my name's Jessica Ames. As Craig said, I have a private practice here in Atlanta over in Inman Park. And I had a long life practicing as an attorney. I had a really good one. And I really loved that part of my career. I made a transition. And so my practice has a large focus now, my therapy practice, on working with couples. Or if it's individuals, it's a lot of work that people are doing kind of on what I think of as their relational lives. So this idea of relational resiliency, which is what I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about, is really one of the most important protective factors for all of our long-term health and well-being. It's becoming clearer and clearer with the research that this relational connection in our lives is not just additive, but it really is necessary. And so what I'm going to talk about briefly is a few topics that I think are very helpful for couples and significant relationships in your lives. And I think it's especially, these topics are helpful for attorneys, which are, my people. You are my people. I have great love and respect for this profession, and an understanding of some of the challenges that it can bring in our lives. So the areas I'm going to talk about, Bob mentioned earlier, was what I refer to as the need to be very aware of our transitions from what I think of as our professional minds and our personal or relational minds. And I'm going to talk to you about what the research is really now teaching us about thriving couples, and what is a thriving couple, and what can we learn from that relationship. And if there's time, then I may add a little bit at the end about how you might work on building this relational resiliency. So to start with this idea of transitions, as attorneys, and this is not absolute truths, right? These are tendencies. So some of this will resonate, take it. And if it doesn't, you can just, listen along. But there are tendencies that we bring to our profession that we often really value in ourselves, and we really value in our colleagues, because they make us very effective at practicing law. And some of those tendencies and traits tend to look like, Bob mentioned some of them. The ones I think about are being very analytical. We're very objective. We can be incredibly persuasive. We often are competitive. He mentioned that. We're good at being assertive. We can lean into aggression if it's called for and necessary. We're very, very detail oriented. We are problem solvers, and we are also problem seekers, right? A lot of us get paid a lot of money to take kind of interesting, creative ideas and then kind of pull it apart and figure out where this could go wrong, right? So we know how to go look for them. So the tricky part that starts to come in is that we move in our professional life on a daily basis in this arena, and it makes us good at what we do. And then we finish the day and we go home and we show up in our lives with our loved ones, with our spouses, with our children, with our friendships, and we're still in that mode. And so then we start to kind of wonder what's happening. And this was a huge part of my own learning life, but we stay in that lawyer mode of our life, and we can clear a dinner table in like under 10 minutes, right? Our families are like, thank you very much. But we will see you at some other point. And these ways of moving that make us so successful, they don't invite, they don't encourage, they don't foster a secure, warm, affectionate, safe connection in the important relationships of our lives. Helen Fisher is a very important researcher and anthropologist, and she really has studied the long-term relationships across the globe in all cultures, across everywhere in the world. And she's identified that the purpose of the committed relationship, especially the long-term committed relationship, is there's 3 drivers. I think about it. There's 3 things that we all want. And I think about it in terms of they are the pulsation. We want to feel connected to that person or persons. We want to feel safe with each other, and we want to experience pleasure and joy. So we think that is the underlying purpose of why we are in these relationships. And so in order to really have that on a consistent basis, which we'll learn about these thriving couples, we need to show up in certain ways in order to foster that with this other person. And there is a secret ingredient out of Julie and John Gottman's research. There was a big article about 5 years ago. There's a secret ingredient, the primary one of the success and happiness in the long-term relationship, and it's kindness. And so when we start to think about what are the characteristics and the traits and the tendencies that our relational lives want, they are things like kindness, they are empathy, it's warmth, things like being very flexible emotionally, being vulnerable with our person. There's laughter and fun and humor. And the other 2 really big ones are appreciations and respect. So when you think about kind of all this warmth, mushy stuff over here in our relational lives, and a lot of what is called on us in our professional arena, certainly not always, but a lot in our end of the work, we have an issue. We have a tension between these 2 places. And so what do we do? Right? Well, the question is, so what do we do about this? I'm a huge advocate of staying in the practice of law and having a really rich, robust, and healthy personal life. And I think that it is incredibly possible to thrive in both places. I think it's also a skill set that a lot of us as attorneys, and I mean, not just us, but in general, we weren't taught this relational side. So for some of you, as Lisa said, I mean, for some of you, this is very easy. Like you really transition well and you can kind of be in both modes. And to you, I think it's just great. Keep doing what you're doing, pay attention to what you're doing, and good. And for some of us, myself included, this was a struggle for me. This was really hard for me. And the thing is I wasn't aware that it was hard for me. My husband, Brian, and my 3 sons were aware that it was hard for me, but I wasn't. And so I had to get really intentional, and I had to get very mindful of the need to make this transition in my life on a daily basis. The way I think about it, the way I work with couples is this is a skill. This is a practice. This is something that we learn how to do. It's not kind of a natural thing that we just figure out. So some things that help with this from my own learning and then working with so many couples, a lot of whom are attorneys, is we have to predict it. We got to know that we're moving in a transition. We're going to have to do it on a very regular basis. And so we know that it's coming and we name it for ourselves. So I actually, we'll have couples or families just actually say the word. So we're in the transition. We're making a shift in the day, which kind of makes everybody's alertness come up. I really recommend talking to your partner and talking to your family and your kids and your significant friendships in your life. And it's a conversation about the need for it. How do we want to take care of our connection as we're moving either into our workday or out of our workday so that we can stay connected with each other as we do it. I think it's really important to, if it is hard for you, the way I think about it is that there's a really good reason that it's hard. Law school and the practice of law changes how our brain fires. We often see things in a different light, in a different way than a lot of other people do because of the way that we're trained, because of the work that we're doing. So there's a reason for it. And the other takeaway I do is I also think that it's very helpful to ritualize this. Transitioning out of work mode and into the life mode, the relational mode, is you want to have rituals that help you do it. This is that idea of it becomes a skill and a practice. When I'm working with couples and families, and even in my life, what are you listening to in the car? If you're back in a car, many of you are, but when we are in cars going back and forth, what are you listening to on your way home? Are you still kind of taking in, are you on calls? Are you taking in the latest and greatest of the news? But is that helping you? Is that slowing you down and putting you in a warmer place, a more relational place, or is that kind of keeping you jacked up in the adrenaline sphere? If you don't do anything else, if you don't remember one thing that I said today, what I'd like you to remember is one of the greatest things you can do is do not come into your house and reconnect with anybody in your life while you are still on your phone. It is one of the fastest ways to rupture a connection as you come back into these places, is to walk in the door on the phone. The 80% of what is taking place between a couple or deep friendships, significant relationships, 80% of it is nonverbal. So kind of taking a breath before you transition in, and warm eyes, soft facial expressions, not on the phone, but how we connect with each other in the first 60 to 120 seconds of coming back together at the end of the day can cascade what happens between us for hours into the evening. So I want that like come together time is the idea I use is that you want to be very protective. You want to almost treat it as sacred because it will kind of set the tone for what we're doing. And then in this pandemic world, it's been, everything has changed. Is often the commute is like mine now. I don't have a commute home, right? I spend all day seeing clients, and then I close my computer and I'm in front of my family in 30 seconds. I don't have that 15 or 20 minutes. And so that can be a very jarring. So people have been very creative about ritualizing this transition. And they're doing yoga, they're changing clothes in their home office, they're taking a walk around the block. But so just play with this and be creative and see what will come of that. So that's the idea of transition. And then I have a couple minutes to just tell you what the research shows us about thriving couples, which is fascinating to me. It's not a lot of data, unfortunately, but couples have not been very important in the research, but for the last 40 years. But we do have about 40 years of good data on couples. And what we've done is we've identified the couples that have been together for 25 to more than 25 years generally. And consistently over those 25 years, they report being really happy, satisfied, very content in that relationship. And so then what we did is we took those people and said, what are they doing? Can we find patterns or ways of being that we can then help and teach how to thrive in relationships? And we did find several things that came out of them. There's really 4 primary. The first one was the most important to me, which means that these people are actually not unicorns, but they are human beings in that they have crisis and they have conflict. So over the course of this time, they have everything that we have. They're just like the rest of us in terms of the harder places. They're not any more immune from the hard pieces. And then the second piece of data that's really interesting is if you watch these people, and you watch them interact with each other over time, they have 20 positive interactions with each other for every 1 negative. So they have a 20-to-1 positive to negative. The negative is it's the ouch, it's the snap, it's the snark, it's the irritability, it's the grumpiness, it's the stuff that we all do. The positives, which is very cool, are super fast and super light and super easy, right? It's just it's a wink, it's a cup of coffee, I say good morning, I say I love you, I touch the back of your head as I walk past to grab something from the kitchen. It's super fast. It's not this very intense, but it's these quick interactions between a couple that builds resiliency. I think about it as the reserves. The cool thing is that when they really get in trouble, so when we're really arguing or when we're really in a struggle, the positive to negative stays 5-to-1. So these couples are ones that really realize that we can both be in distress about something with each other, and we can stay kind and connected. It's not an all or nothing game. The second thing they've done, or the third thing that is really interesting, is they have, this made me nervous until I studied it a little bit more. They have removed all the negativity from the relationship, which I didn't understand how that was really going to be possible. But when we studied it, what we realized is, when I say remove negativity, is they've taken out the put down. So it's not that I can't complain to Brian or have an upset with my husband, Brian. It's the way that I do it is what is eliminating the negativity. So that means that they've gotten rid of criticism for each other. They have a handle on their defensiveness. They stop stonewalling, which is that cold shoulder, right? I'm in the room with you, but I'm not going to pay an ounce of attention. Or the really toxic one is they've taken out the contempt, which is that the contempt is I go after you as a person. You always, you never. So they've lifted this out. And they've replaced it with ways to communicate about the struggles in a way that doesn't further the rupture. And then the final thing, which is a skill that if there's more time, we'd talk about it, but they know how to make a good repair. And that's also really, I hope, relieving, is that you can read about repairs, you can learn about repairs. Repairs are critical in relationships, because the way I think about it is, it's not a matter of if I'm going to step in it or hurt Brian's feelings, right? We can't do this for 20, 30, 40 years and not have hard days and not show up in a not great way. But when we do it, we know how to cycle back and make a repair with that person. And so those are our thriving couples. And with that, Craig, I'm going to give it back to you.
Thank you, Jessica, Lisa, Bob. That was amazing. What a wonderful blend of science and hard thinking, and yet practicality, and how to get through the day, relationship wise or work wise or alcohol wise, or and how to be aware and sensitive about who we are as lawyers and what we bring to it already. Just amazing. I just have a quick question I wanted you all to talk about together, which is, how has COVID sort of come into this? Because we are more isolated, in some sense more lonely. One of the things that we've joked about as a bar association is that we didn't realize how critical it was to associate. And how much a difference that makes to our mental health. Obviously, that's real with your primary relationships that you're talking about. But you all take a few minutes just to talk about that, and then we'll sign off. Thank you.
I know personal experience. In one way, the pandemic and shutting down of the courts made my life easier. I was still talking to clients. I was still money was still coming in, but I wasn't having to run around to various courthouses across the state or go to trial or anything. So in one way, it's a weird thing to even say to people because it's been such a hard year for most people, but in a way, 2020 was a easier year for me professionally. But I missed my partners. I missed my friends in the bar. I was scrolling through the participants in this seminar, and a number of friends of mine who I haven't seen in a while are watching this. So I miss that camaraderie, as you said, Craig, of getting together at bar functions and Gactyl seminars and the after work, dinners or drinks or whatever. And I was also, and I don't want to dominate this, but I was struck by Jessica talking about transitions. It's really hard to be working at home and transition into your non-work mode. And that's where I think drinking became a problem, not necessarily for me personally, but for a lot of people, because that was the demarcation line. Let's go have a drink downstairs or whatever. And that's how you transition, which is not a great way to transition.
Yeah, you know, it was a little, it's been all over the map. The two cohorts that I saw, that I spent the most time working with and feeling protective of in COVID were those who were really living alone, and working really hard of having to make those strategic decisions about how to pod, because it was so stressful to be living alone in all of this. And then the other side of the equation were really the families with young children, that both two people working really hard and no childcare. And so those were the two cohorts where I saw a lot of strain. On the resiliency side, it was fascinating though, to Bob's point, when you close the courts, stop the travel, a lot of couples got a lot better. So I had a lot of couples in my practice that were really struggling. And when COVID hit, taking out all of that movement and required movement and bringing everybody home and removing some of that, they got much, much better. So I thought that was really interesting to see. And it's people are making decisions about how do they want to protect some of that as we start to come out.
Yeah, I would ditto that as well. I think we are getting wiser about how to live really in the digital age in ways that I hope will be wonderful. And I agree with Jessica. In the beginning, there was kind of a lifting of a lot of the time burdens that a lot of particularly families with kids and activities and traffic and schedule, sort of that time generated stress is all with us. And that was so much better. But over time, we're seeing the lack of resiliency. We go back to that resiliency, right? In terms of social, we're missing that. And that's really significant. So I think we'll put all of this together in some really creative and wonderful ways for ourselves and our health. So.
Would you join me, folks who are attending, unmute and let's give these wonderful panelists a hand. Thank you to each of you for being here and coming. We are so grateful, and you're helping us take care of ourselves and understand ourselves, and it's so important. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It was
Right,
good.
it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Great.
Stay well, all.